Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks, where we meet with the top thought leaders and strategists in emerging technologies, digital assets, a regulatory landscape, and capital markets. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, and joining us this afternoon, we have Ariel Seidman. He's founder and CEO of Hivemapper, Amir Haleem, founder and CEO of Helium, as well as Trevor Harries-Jones, director at Render Network Foundation. We're here to discuss how DePIN is transforming essential infrastructure from maps, wireless, and compute into decentralized, resilient, and user-owned ecosystems. It is great to have all of you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks. Ariel, let's kick it off with you. Give us some background where you sit within the ecosystem.
Yeah, we thank you for having me. We're building a decentralized global map. Really simply, like imagine Waze, but with cameras, right? So we have all these cameras that are deployed in people's cars, people like you and me, Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, etc. And they just drive. They just drive like they normally do. And this camera, which we built and we designed, is effectively mapping the roads. And so it has both eyes as well as an intelligence. So it's saying, okay, there's construction over here, there's a speed limit over here, there's a slowdown because there's a traffic accident. So unlike Waze, what is relying primarily on just people submitting information through this app, we're effectively leveraging this camera and AI to build the map as you go. So it's a really easy way to contribute, especially if you drive a ton, of which there's many people who drive a ton every single day. And then on the other side, we have customers, whether it be Volkswagen's robotaxi service, whether it be Lyft themselves as a company actually utilizing the map, and a whole host of other great customers leveraging all this really incredibly fresh data.
Yeah, thanks so much. Amir, tell us about Helium.
Helium's one of the older DePIN projects out there. We are a decentralized wireless network. Allows anyone, regular people like you or I, to build wireless networks, whether it's for sensors or for cell phones. Users of that network are big companies like AT&T and Telefonica, as well as our own service, Helium Mobile. And part of the magic really is that anyone gets to do this. Like anyone can deploy a miniature cell tower, whether it's at their house or whether it's at a coffee shop or a mall. We've even got some in airports. And we just think it's a much smarter, more cohesive way to build a wireless network, right? Rather than a gigantic company spending tens of billions of dollars or hundreds of billions of dollars building a network, and having a hard time getting it into lots and lots of complicated places. This is a completely people-powered version of that. I think it's the largest wireless network in the world. Got over 100,000 nodes in the United States and Mexico, serves over 1 million users every day, and is just continuing to grow at this point.
And Trevor, tell us about the work that you're doing at the Render Network Foundation.
Sure. We're also one of the earliest and largest DePIN projects. We connect unused GPUs from home computers and data centers to creators and studios across the globe in order to power real Hollywood productions, large-scale displays like the Sphere in Las Vegas, concerts, games, and now AI.
And let's take a step back here for a moment, Trevor. Give us some background on what DePIN actually is. It sounds as if it's another way to rebuild infrastructures today.
So it is definitely a new model, crowdsourced participation. In many ways, Bitcoin was the original DePIN. It proved crypto could be used to decentralized infrastructure. And now we're seeing DePIN evolve into real-world utility where an actual service is delivered, like rendering a frame rather than solving a random math problem. It builds on the gig economy pioneered by Uber and Airbnb, lowering the barrier to participation from just those who can raise a lot of capital to anyone who can afford a home computer, a dash cam, or a mobile phone contract.
Yeah, and Ariel, you made an interesting point before that the users aren't the product necessarily, they're the participants.
Yeah. I mean, it's, what Trevor said is right, which is like, this is very much kind of in the lieu of crowdsourced systems. And I've had an opportunity in, prior jobs and prior companies build these crowdsourced systems. The unique aspect here is that, yes, they're crowdsourced, but unlike Waze, where a lot of people provided data and they got nothing in return, what DePIN is actually saying across all of our different projects is they're actually being rewarded, right? And I think that they're effectively becoming part of the economy. So as people in our case use the map more and pay for the map more, fundamentally those rewards or that cash is flowing down to those contributors. And so I think that really kind of flips the crowdsource concept on its head, or maybe takes it one step further, where it actually intertwines it with an economy.
Yeah. Amir, let's talk about the David versus Goliath theme for a moment here. Larger infrastructure projects, you think of government and large companies leading the way. Or how are you working with companies and the government? I mean, there certainly has to be regulations and code and so forth that these projects require to be operable. How does that work?
In the case of helium, we take advantage of a lot of unlicensed spectrum. So the way wireless frequencies work is that there is licensed spectrum, which is you probably hear of, and FCC runs these auctions, and companies like Verizon and Google buy the spectrum, allows them to run much higher power radios and towers. There's also unlicensed spectrum, which is things like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and microwaves and things like that. We operate in the unlicensed bands. So the downside is you get a lot less range than the licensed stuff. The upside is equipment is very, very cheap and can be installed almost anywhere. So one of the things that I think is unique and powerful about DePINs and helium in particular, as it relates to wireless, is that indoor coverage is a huge problem for cell phone companies, right? Like it's one thing to get big towers outdoors. It's another thing to, get coverage in a corner of a Starbucks somewhere. And so one of the things that Helium is able to do fairly uniquely is be able to create coverage in those areas by virtue of letting people just go and install a $100 access point in the Starbucks. It works very, very seamlessly. So cell phone users jump on and off the network the same way you switch between cell towers. It's not a process where you actually have to manually join a network or find it. And as Ariel mentioned, like part of the magic, especially when crypto is involved, is that it's a very decentralized process. Like anyone can participate in this network. They don't have to talk to us. They don't have to interact with us. And it becomes part of this like gigantic sharing economy, effectively, that really we don't have to sit in the middle of, which is really part of what makes it special and part of what makes it grow as quickly as it does.
Trevor, what about governance then? If anyone can join, I mean, clearly, there's malintentions that do exist.
Yeah.
Cybersecurity is a concern. Privacy, your data is a concern. So what does a governance model look like?
It's one that evolves over time. For us, it's been great. There's proof in usage. The output that is produced on the render network is utilized in well-known productions or on large stages. So you have an economy where really people prove their performance over time, and that contribution then helps drive governance so that actors are moving in the same direction. It's definitely a new approach, but for me, the US is in the middle of a global arms race. And for us to win, we need to tap into every available resource. So I look at projects like this as not in place of the large data centers or large providers, but supplemental to. There are millions of idle consumer GPUs just waiting to be utilized out there and unlocked. And these types of projects are really the path towards doing that and helping accelerate that race.
So, Ariel, it almost sounds like there's an energy story here as well.
Yeah, what Render's doing in terms of the energy needs is massive. I just want to add a little bit, to what Trevor was saying there in terms of this idea of governance and proof, I think is really critical. And Hivemapper, in a previous incarnation, we paid people cash, right? Like just, here you go map a road, here's $5, whatever it is, right? And there we were like the bad guy, right? Like people would have their cameras looking at the sky, all these different places. And so we wouldn't pay them because you have to be looking at the road in order to map the road. Or the camera has to be looking at the road more precisely. And we became the bad guy. Once we actually shifted to the model that we have right now, which is DePIN, crypto incentivized, and we put all the rewards openly, transparently on the blockchain, all of a sudden, this idea that we were the bad guy disappeared. Why? Because it was all open. It was all transparent, right? And so I think that is a critical aspect of governance, is just putting everything out there, right? And maybe in the early days, you start off with maybe 80% out there, and then over time you add more and more transparency, because that's really what builds the trust and the loyalty and the understanding of how these systems actually work. And I think the blockchain is kind of a really critical aspect of that.
And the blockchain your projects are on is Solana.
Correct. Yeah, we're all in Solana.
Right. Is there a reason why you chose Solana for your projects? Is it because of its security or because of the transparency that it lends? What makes that particular infrastructure more attractive than other types of blockchain?
We'll I'll start. I mean, in our case, it was just the most cost effective, right? And I knew a lot of the core team members, like Toli, like Raj, et cetera. And I just had trust that they were going to be good stewards of this amazing blockchain that they've built over the last 5, 6, 7 years now. And so it was a combination of really, really low costs, quite frankly, relative to Ethereum. And it was that trust that the people who were kind of the early creators of it were going to shepherd it in the right way.
Yeah. Amir, I want to get your thoughts on that as well.
Yes, similar story. I mean, Solana, I think, is by far the fastest and cheapest way to do what Helium does. There are other, fast blockchains that exist these days, but none of them really feel like they have a critical mass. Like, I think part of what makes blockchain ecosystems work is having big communities that are active and involved with each other. That, as we're having in this conversation, like all three projects are helpful to each other and related to each other, and it helps grow the whole pie. And Solana's, I think, one of the few places that kind of has fostered that environment. A lot of it, I think, to do with the people involved, like Anatoly and Raj, especially the founders, have done a great job of sort of cultivating this like everyone wins kind of culture. And I don't think many other, I haven't seen many other places offer anything like that. And certainly at the time that Helium was making those decisions, you were picking really between Ethereum and Solana, and to do this on Ethereum would have been hundreds or thousands of times more expensive, to the point that it was not really feasible for us.
Yeah. Trevor, I see you shaking your
Yeah.
head in agreement. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we came from a different blockchain, and so for us, we'd hit some of these challenges. Cost, scalability and affordability were central. But really, I like the answer from both of them that a lot of this is community. I felt Solana had a growing DePIN community that really made sense for us to bring our project to, and has only delivered as we've got into the community, got to know the other DePIN projects and the players in the ecosystem, and helped us scale.
So, Trevor, when do you think this will become almost ubiquitous, this type of technology where we're using it? Someone such as myself is using it every day. Are we even aware that we're using it? Is this a 3 to 5 year outlook? It
Yeah.
seems as if technology is just evolving so rapidly these days.
Yeah, well, DePIN is projected to be a $3.5 trillion space in 5 years' time. So I think you're really at the cusp of this becoming mainstream. And for many of us projects, we've been there sort of at the start of this, and have now got to the great part of scaling and usage.
Right.
And I think when you hit those points, that's when you really start to see Main Street get involved, and people learn that they can actually participate in economies they were just blocked from before unless they could raise large amounts of capital. So I would expect DePIN to have more and more traction as these projects show how you can unlock the value and drive usage to a community, or benefit to a community, more than just to one centralized party.
Yeah, and Ariel, I would agree with Trevor. I think when you start talking about user experience, that's when things start to mature. When you scaled, right, and now you're thinking about UX and getting from point A to point B flawlessly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Trevor's 100% right. I think the other aspect of this is like, look, I think it's like 65, 70% of the entire crypto markets is represented by one asset called Bitcoin, which we all know. And in order, that will continue to grow, that will do just fine, I'm sure. But in order for the entire crypto ecosystem to grow, right, to not just become like a $3 trillion asset, to become a $30 trillion asset, you need projects like ours that you see here represented today, that it's about navigation, it's about communication, it's about AI inference, right? You need technologies like that just represent massive markets in order to kind of continue to grow the crypto asset class as a whole. And so I think that's why, DePIN is such a critical part of the crypto ecosystem. Look, these projects all, I think you were kind of alluding to this idea that they do take more time to mature and scale, right? It's not it's not like flipping a switch, right? And there's technology that needs to grow, there's user experience that needs to grow, there's governance that needs to, mature. All those things need to happen, and that does take time. And I think you're seeing that process occur right now with all three of our projects.
Yeah, and Amir, I would also argue that we're starting to understand the fundamentals of the ecosystem. To Ariel's point, it's not just about Bitcoin. We're understanding how, other types of assets within the ecosystem work.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, what's interesting about DePINs, I think in particular the three here, are we actually have users on the other side that oftentimes don't really know or care that it's a crypto application. So in the case of Helium, we have a cell phone service called Helium Mobile. On the face of it, looks like any other cell phone service, just happens to be a hell of a lot cheaper. And part of the way the cheapness happens is as a result of using this community-powered infrastructure on the back end. But Helium Mobile isn't presenting itself as a crypto first solution. It's just presenting itself as a very good phone service that happens to be much cheaper than anyone else's. And I think that is kind of the evolution that I'm hoping we see crypto take, which is that you start to see not just deep in applications, but financial applications like banks and other stuff start to form that you don't even know are, stable coin backed on the back end or whatever. And to some degree, you don't really care, right? In the same way, I've often used the example that I think of different blockchains the same way I think of cloud compute providers. Like, I don't care if Instagram runs on AWS or Google Cloud or Azure. Like, why would I care about that?
Right.
And I think, crypto kind of needs to get to that place quickly, and is happening now, where the applications themselves are valuable on their own, and the fact that they're crypto powered underneath is what allows them to be valuable, but isn't the entirety of its value proposition.
Yeah, and I think it's an excellent point that you make, because we tend to think very US and Western centric, where we have these legacy institutions in place, where the fact of the matter is there's a massive, couple billion addressable market where folks are using the underlying infrastructure to grow local micro economies or get alternative forms of capital formation, to bank, act across border. This is the technology that it's allowing these mechanisms to let economies grow. And I think we overlook that so much here. Like, what's the value of Bitcoin? What's the next altcoin? How much, Solana's trading at these days? But this really is the core infrastructure. We're watching the global capital markets evolve in real time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that it's user centric. For me, it's such a joy to watch people use these products and not be talking crypto centric, but be talking actual problem centric. And yeah, it's fantastic to be with three folks who do the same.
Yeah, actually finding solutions for problems that exist. And I think that's really what the point is at the end of the day. Appreciate all of your insights. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.